Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I have with me Jessica. Jessica is a 6'2" emotional manifestor, and I've been waiting a long time to have Jessica on my podcast because, yeah, I just love listening to you. Just share everything that you share, and I just love feeling into your emotional depth online. And so I just really was looking forward to having a one-on-one conversation and seeing what happens from here.
Yeah, I'm so excited too. I've told you this before, but it's like you're the 1762 that I'm just like, oh, I wish I had that 62, right? And I just absolutely love the way you're able to just break things down and with that guilt motivation, just get it out there. And oh yeah, it's gorgeous. So I love following you too. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, so excited. I mean, usually I kind of start with like how people got into design and all of that, but is there any place that you want to start with, or anything, any topic that you're feeling into currently that you want to talk about?
Well, I think it's a good place to start too with like how I got started, because when I found out I was a manifestor, it didn't click at once. It took me a while because I was so conditioned and my mind really wanted to be that auric hug. It's like, no, I'm not this repelling person. That's not true. But then the more I leaned into it and the more I was able to like detach myself from that meaning I had created around repelling aura, was like, oh, wait, I see the evidence. It's here. So I had just burnt down my whole entire life, is what it felt like when I found human design. I'd been running a coffee shop for 51 weeks, and then I had to make the really hard decision of declaring it bankrupt. And at this time, I was like in my early 30s, and I didn't know about the roof. I didn't know about the second life phase. So it was really nice to find human design shortly after that. It was late 2019. And it was mid-September when I had to go through that whole process of, attorneys asking me all kinds of questions about why this bankruptcy is happening, and, making sure that I haven't fucked it up in some way and that it's not my fault. So it was a really grueling process that left me questioning everything. Right. And so it's really interesting how, for me, it was mostly, it was like that open G, that undefined G center that really was like looking for a direction. And then I found human design. It was like, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to be looking for a direction. So I think that's highly interesting, but that's definitely what attracted me to it. Was like, I was searching for what is next. Where am I going to go next? At the same time, feeling like I was going insane. But that was that second life phase. It was like I was being dragged up to that roof. That coffee shop experience was like my last big hurrah. I really deeply desired to stay in that first life phase. I'd kind of settled with the fact that life's going to be hard and it's going to be tough and it's going to be, bumping elbows into shit all the time. But then really understanding that I was sick and tired of that. I was so done with that. My entire being was just like, no, we can't do this anymore. And then human design entered, and it took me about 4 months before I was like, okay, I'll go into this. And it was actually a dear person who I can't call this person a friend, because they kind of just showed up, told me a little bit about my human design that I hadn't heard before, and then disappeared. But that piece of information was about my profile. It was about the 6'2" profile. And that just clicked. And I was like, oh shit, okay, now we got to just go deep. And so since then, I've just been deep diving everywhere I can, when it feels right. And yeah, it's been a really, I want to say, hard but fun process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I really feel that as well. Hard, but also the most exhilarating experience to be on, the most suspenseful journey to be on, and yeah, definitely difficult. And you said something about not resonating with being a manifestor immediately. And, I mean, it's a lot when you read like closed and repelling aura. I mean, that's a handful to digest, right? That's something that the mind doesn't take in very easily, right? And it
Mhm.
makes all sorts of meanings and stories about what that really means. And of course, hand in hand comes with, like, with that hand in hand comes your lifelong experience of kind of feeling like, I mean, you're the kind of manifester that has the ability to be social, right?
Mhm.
Because you have the channel of openness, but that doesn't mean that you're open. You still have a closed, a really densely packed aura, right? And so you go through your life through this experience of kind of feeling like you're different, you know, and that social interactions are extremely different for you. And so yeah, it's not easy for the mind to come upon closed and repelling. And although somewhere it makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, absolutely not, because every manifester truly does want to be a generator, right?
Yep.
Um, and so I'm really curious about, like, even taking it back all the way back to your childhood. And I want to hear a little bit about like what it was like growing up, and what did you feel like you had the kind of impact and you experienced the kind of peace that you know is somewhere in you, within you, the potential of it to feel within you? Or was it always a lot of anger and a lot of, just feeling like, what's happening here? Why is everyone trying to control me? Why can't I seem to interact with others in the way that other people interact with each other? So I'm just really curious about your childhood.
Yes. Okay. Before I go there, just a disclaimer. If I tell any stories, because I never know what's going to come out of me, if I tell any stories, just I understand that the people that raised me absolutely love me, and they did the best they did with the knowledge they had, right? Having a manifestor child is absolutely not easy. And I was born 2 years before Ra ever even downloaded or got this information forced onto him, even, right? So my childhood was, I was raised in South Dakota, which is in the middle of the Bible Belt, right? So it's a very conservative Christian, children should be seen and not heard, and kind of environment. So for me, it was really hard because I'm not only am I a manifester, but I'm a gunslinger too. So it's like I'm just gonna say shit, and people will be like, what just happened? What did you just say? And I believe that my inner vision got me in trouble a couple of times too, because I would just know things and I would just say them, and it would be like, how the does she know that shit, So definitely felt this. I mean, I don't know if I felt like it was wrong until people started pointing it out, that I wasn't this social being, that I wasn't around people. And if I had repelled someone, the question was very often, well, what did you do? Right? Because I must have done something to repel them away. And I would repel parents big time. Like, and that was really difficult for me because I would love their kid, but their parent would not like me. And I would sense that, I would feel that. And it would always be like, but why? And it was kind of, I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy, but at the same time, I like to say, like, I didn't really care, but my mind started to care the more I got conditioned, right? And so when I'm talking to a lot of my manifestor clients now, it's really about, well, what has the mind created about that story? Because I can make all kinds of meanings out of my childhood, which was really anger filled. Like, I was one of those teenagers that was angry. It was so funny because I was going to make a reel. There was a trend way back with the teenage dirtbag song. And I made a reel where I was like looking back at my first life phase. And there was a picture of me in my bedroom when I was maybe like 16. And on my door, there was a whole bunch of posters, and also like an anger management poster that I'd written out myself. Right. So anger had been and has been a big part of my life, because that feeling of being controlled and that feeling of being the scapegoat. Because in a classroom, if you can't control two people, me and another person, even if it's the other person's fault per se, I was the one that would get in trouble. right? I was the one that would have to take it on because it wasn't the other person's fault. It was my fault, which I understand now because it's like, oh, that's the close person. I can't read her. That must be her fault, you know? And so these things, they leave wounds. Of course they do. And then being a female manifestor on top of it, often having these leadership positions, you know, there's a lot of my chart pointing towards leadership with my trajectory of desire, motivation, and with my 22 and all of these fun things. But often in a man-dominated world where I didn't know timing. My whole life, timing is just like, I don't know timing. And so that's really something that human design has taught me. But at the same time, even timing or not, I really struggled to be heard, to have that impact, because what does she know? And often what would happen was I would bring on an idea. I would bring on this, oh, this is what we can do. Like back in 2008, I was working at an office and I'm like, oh my God, you guys, we got to get on Facebook. We have to get on Facebook. This is where we're going to find our people. But it was so new that they were like, no. And then, 5 years later, they're trying to get on Facebook when it's too late, or at the restaurant that I was general manager at a restaurant, cocktail bar, and nightclub, which was a nightmare, but I did it for 2.5 years. And in the beginning, we were looking at like, okay, so how are we going to attract people? And it was a social eating concept, but I know Stavanger, I know that city, and social eating was new back then. And I'm like, well, what if we just have something called an ego menu, which is just like one plate that you can, that ego that you just want to have that for yourself. You don't want to share it. And they were like, no, that's stupid. And then a year later, after I had quit, that's when they started doing it. It's just like, so I see this happening all the time. And I'm just like, okay, one, it's showing me I'm not here to be managed. I'm not here to have a boss. That's just the way it is. And every boss I've had has said I'm a terrible employee and a perfect leader. And that's me, so that's a lot about my childhood and all the way up to my adult life. But anger was definitely something that my last fist fight was at age 27. I was angry. And so it's been really nice to lean into peace. Like my husband keeps mentioning, it's like, you used to be so angry. I would come home and I would bring my day out on him. I would just, spew it out and get it out somewhere. And that was not okay in any sort of way, right? But now it's just come to this point where I protect my peace at all freaking costs. It's like down to the point that you can't call me unless it's after 1 p.m. and before 9 p.m. It's like, it's just, you can't.
People have been informed.
Yep. Doesn't mean that they like it. But it's the way it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that they like it or don't like it. That's not the point, right? And yeah, I think so. I grew up with a lot of manifestors around me. So a lot of my best friends have been manifestors, and they've just kind of picked me out of the crowd and walked up to me and like chosen me and like taken me in under their wing. And, like you mentioned, like, you guys are way ahead of your time in a sense, because you are here to initiate things in the world. And I cannot tell you how much new music I was introduced to by my manifestor friends, like fashion, or like before things were trendy, my manifestor friends were already talking about them and already informing about them. And it's very common. I think, I don't remember where Ra said this, but I remember reading it, that manifestors are either like rejected for their ideas and their initiations, or they're copied eventually. That's what happens. And yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that, people just, it's really difficult to be on the receiving end of impact if it's not the right kind of impact for you. And I think a big lesson that I've learned when it comes to being around manifestors is that when they're really moving towards something, that, it is not my job to guide them, show them anything. I used to try to do that. And I remember like having like broken up with friends because of that. And, because they're just designed to be way more independent that we can even begin to imagine. And, their peace truly has to come through what they do in the world, right? What they bring forth in the world. And if they don't have that, then they're always angry. And yet when we're around them, we're always like, why can't you be less angry? And then when they go out and do what they want to do, we're like, oh my God, like, why are you doing that? I'm so scared. Like, I'm so insecure about where you're headed. And, manifestations are not planned. Like, I think that's the thing that people get very wrong, which is why everyone else wants to be like a manifestor, right? Because they think that we can come up with a plan in our head and strategize and then initiate that thing and like technically inform everyone. It doesn't work like that, right? A manifestation is literally that manifestation of energy into reality. And it is probably just as much of a surprise to you guys as much as it is to us. So I wanted to know, what does it feel like in your system to manifest? Like, what does the process look like? Have you been able to observe that?
Yeah. So for the people listening, my authority is unconsciously defined, right? So my channel of sensitivity is fully unconscious, and my channel of openness is 22 is my personality sun, and 12 is my design earth, if I'm not mistaken. It's one of them. And so it was really difficult in the beginning to like understand, like, what does that feel like? What is this actually, when is that root pressure to solar plexus clarity actually moving me into action, right? And I'd say that for me, my inner vision has really been something that I lean into, my cognition and understanding like how that really can be a part of my guidance, right? And closing my eyes and just really feeling into that sense of, is this where I'm supposed to go? Is this coming from up here, or is this actually coming from inside here? And like I touch my chest area because that's where it feels right for me. It's like I'm feeling pulled from my chest. It's like, oh, this is where we're going. It's like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Donnie Darko, but if you haven't, it's an amazing movie. Everybody should watch Donnie Darko. It's about time travel, and it's just amazing. But he has like this, he'll see this tube come out of his tummy, and it's just, he's just watching this tube, and then he's just like walking where this tube is going because he has no choice of where he's going to walk. And that's really what it feels like. It's just this, okay, this is where we're going. And it's so funny how often my mind will just trip me up. It's like, no, that's not where we're going. That's not where no, you're not good enough to do that yet. You shouldn't be there yet. No, that's not okay. That's not safe. All of these not self topics that I have to deal with. And so the newest initiation I've created, and this, this urge, I guess, is the word that people use, but I really am like, I struggle with that word, even though I have someone who told me that Ra uses the word urge. I haven't heard that myself, but it's just like the surge of energy to do something, right? And it just never makes sense. Like, I'm creating a conference April 2024. It doesn't make sense. There's no part of it that makes sense. It's like I catch myself questioning it so often, but there's no nerves. I'm calm when I'm sitting and researching the people who I want to have on the stage. I'm calm when I sit down to find the new place that we're going to have it at. And I say new because I thought I had the place, but they're bankrupt. And so it's just, difficulty in the beginning. It's part of the process. And so I'm really leaning into the fact that it never makes sense, but it just feels right. And the same with my content. Like, I don't post often. I post very rarely. And if you were to look at the strategies, that should not work. I should not have 1,000 followers based off of 50 posts in a year and a half, but I really am leaning into the fact that I'm here to decondition that strategy part, right mind, right brain. And I post when I feel called to post something, and it's always worked. And so my mind will come in and question everything all the time. But it's down to those small surges of, whoop, this is where we're going, to the big ones of the fest or the conference. It's just like, okay, this is where we're going. It doesn't make sense. And I think that's just like one of the biggest misconceptions, is that a manifestor can manifest from the mind. Oh, you're a manifestor, you can do whatever you want. No, I can't. No, I can't. I'm being moved by the cosmos. That is not my mind. So yeah, it's a feeling of, it really is a feeling of peace, even if I don't believe that peace equals a feeling that comes after I've done something. I truly believe that peace is always available to me, but it's just a true feeling of peace when I'm working on these things. Yeah.
I hear you. I feel similarly about success. It's when I'm just being myself, even when I'm not guiding others, when I'm not trying to be more than who I am, I consistently feel this feeling of success within myself. And so I fully agree with you that it's not something that happens after action. It's just your frequency when you're operating like yourself, when you're being true to yourself, right? And yeah, I mean, that's crazy to even hear that it's just your energy moving you somewhere, and then you have this defined ajna up top that can be, and it's here to structure, right, your ajna, and try to structure your manifestation, which is again an interesting, must be an interesting process for you to witness, because that's not what it's here for, right?
Nope.
It help others with efficiency, but it's not here to make your own manifestation more efficient. And that can be a trip and a half for sure. And I think people get this really wrong, is that it's like somehow easy to be a manifestor, or somehow manifestors lucked out, or somehow, that if you can just go out and do whatever you want to do, then that means that you don't have to struggle like the rest of us, which is so far from the truth, from having spoken to so many manifestors in my life. Like, it's just as scary for them, if not more, because it's so much responsibility, right? And it's so much, I don't know, there's a lot of, like, if you want someone in your life, you got to go for it. If you want to make something happen in your career, you got to go for it. Like, it's just, everything in life has to be approached by you, whereas the rest of us, we're just waiting for things to come to us, right? And so that brings me to this question of this rejection wound that Ra talks about, that I've talked about with other manifestors as well. Because when you do initiate, when you do go after what feels right for you, or what you want to see in the world, then there is always chances that people are not going to be on board. People are not going to, flow with your current. And, when we don't know about informing, that can be an even more difficult journey. So how do you feel about rejection? Like, how did you feel about it previously, and how do you feel about it now? And also, has informing kind of shifted things for you a little bit?
Yeah. So rejection is, again, the more and more I lean into design and my design and who I'm here to be, the more I understand that I don't care about the rejection, but my mind does. But that wounding, and we have to take this whole, our whole life experience into consideration. And of course, as a kid, when someone was like, oh, I don't want to be your friend, or an adult was like, no, you can't be with my child, or someone didn't like all the ideas that I would bring to the table a little bit too early, people just reject them. It's like, it's so scary to step into that role again, and to actually lean into the fact that, yeah, I have this power and people are not going to like it. Some are going to like it. And I noticed that really when I'm working on this conference now, where it's like, okay, I'm going to reach out to these people and I'm going to ask them if they want to be a speaker, and they might say no. And so it's like, that can be scary. But the more I do it, first of all, the more I see that people get on board, which is like every time someone just gets on board, I'm like, oh shit, yes. This is what it feels like. We're doing it. We're going. Okay, this is good. We found the right people. This is great. And the more I also see, because this initiation is correct, I'm getting a lot of support. But there's also that part of me that's terrified of sharing my idea because I'm afraid of being copied, because I'm afraid someone else is going to like beat me to it. I'm an emotional manifestor. I'm slow. It takes me a while, And so I'm very picky, but second line about who I'm sharing this information with, who I'm talking to this about. And I'm okay sharing it now because I've had all those conversations with people. So now it's like I can talk about it openly. But in the beginning, I was really like, okay, these are, almost like confidants. Not that I have a lot of fourth lines, but I still needed that secrecy of like, okay, I'm going to talk to you about this, but please, and like I told Mar, I was like, you're a fourth line, of course, talk to your people about it, but just like, don't go on Instagram and talk about it, please, so this has just been really a healing process. And I think that's what all manifestors have to go through, because we are the only type that is here to be rejected. We're the only type here to be rejected. And not a lot of manifestor accounts are talking about that part. Like, that fucking hurts. And of course, that's going to create this meaning, right? Our meaning making machines about what does that actually mean and what does that feel like? And no, of course, it's not a good feeling, but in the end of the day, it is here to protect us, right? It's here to protect my peace. In the end of the day, it's like that person's not here for you. And if that person would sort of kind of perhaps get on board, it would only be a resistance. So it's much better. They're just like, nope, not for me. And I mean, undefined heart, right? It's like, I don't know my worth. I don't know. I don't have that inherent sense of confidence that can come with, the defined ego. I'm not saying everybody does, because there's all wounds that can come into that too. But it's just this sense of really leaning into that I have nothing to prove, and I'm just creating this thing because I'm feeling called to do it. I'm feeling moved to do it. And this is what's happening. And okay, we'll see what happens. I'm like, is it going to be 20 people? Is it going to be 100 people? I don't know. I have 50 people on the wait list, which is after saying it once, one announcement and 50 people. So something's going to happen, it just feels right. But that rejection part can really stop us, and especially female manifestors. When you have to, stereotype things, but the most female manifestors that I've talked to, it's just like, if you're a man and you're a manifestor, you are socially accepted to just go. And that's not really socially accepted for females yet. So it's not easy. I'm never going to tell people it's easy. I gate 47.
I don't think it's easy to be yourself in this not self world, regardless of what your design is. It's not an easy process. It's a struggle all the way through. But yeah, I think the deeper you go into your process, the less you care. I mean, your mind still cares, but you just your design, the more that it gets empowered, your body, the more that it's empowered, it's just doing its thing, and the mind can keep doing its whatever it does, right? So, and like, I love that you said that you just announced it once and you have like 50 people on, and Ra said that informing is marketing for manifestors. Use your throat. And I have a defined throat as well, but I can just, even just sitting here and absorbing your frequency, I can just feel the power in that throat. I can just feel the energy in that throat. And yeah, when it's really correct, there's nothing else that you need to do, because it's like what Ra says, it's like manifestors, when they inform, they part the seas, and that kind of clears their way and also attracts the right people to come in. And the only solution to getting over that rejection wound is peace. And the only way manifestors are going to get peace is when they do initiate, when they do actually go after what they what they really, really want to go after or feel like going after, right? The only I don't even know the word that he used, but like the only solution, the only medicine for that wound is peace. Deep, deep, deep peace. And when a manifestor has that, after a certain point, it doesn't matter, who's on board, who's not on board, because something has been created in the world because of them, even if it's in like the initial phase, even if it's, they planted the seeds and now they're watching it grow little by little by little. Like there's just so much relaxation that comes from that. And once a manifestor really taps into that, then there's no looking back, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
then there's just stepping more into your peace and more into your peace. So yeah, I think that's really, really beautiful and really good to hear that, coming off of your third line phase, that now when you're on the roof, you're being able to like evaluate things and then now create things from that place of, just feeling more healed. Actually, I want to hear more about like, what does it feel like to be on a roof,
Mm-hmm.
and how is it like, how many years have you been on the roof for, and how has it evolved sort of?
Yeah. Oh, it's very interesting. I have a lot of people around me who are afraid that I'm depressed, or afraid because I've changed so much, afraid because I don't seem so excited and passionate and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I am, but it's refined. It's a refinement that keeps growing each and every day. And when I was 27, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Well, at 26, actually, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which was fine. I mean, we don't have to go into that thing, but I found mindfulness and mindfulness practice because of that diagnosis. And really having that mindfulness practice was like life-changing for me. I remember like the first 15 minutes of the 8-week course that I was going to go to, the guy is like, your thoughts are like clouds on the sky. Some days it's going to be a bright sky with blue skies and a sun and no thoughts and no clouds. And other days it's thunder and lightning. And I was just like, wait, what? I'm not my thoughts? What do you mean? I was just like so confused. I'm like, these things don't have to dictate me. What do you mean? And so I really started that process of taking that step back to observe what's going on way before I found human design. And it was really like, it's been a healing process of, now I forgot your question, Pragya.
I'm just asking about the roof, kind of like.
Yes, that's where I was.
Yeah.
So I remember, that when I was like 27, it's funny because not too long ago, I shared my passport picture at 27 and then my passport picture at 37. And the difference is immense. Like you can see at 27, I'm just like angry and my eyes are bulging and it's just like, get me out of here kind of thing. And then at 37, I'm like, hello, okay, I've mellowed. And it wasn't until after my coffee shop, I really was able to lean into the fact that things were changing. I felt so wrong. It was like, I really felt like there's something wrong with me because I cut out all of my friends, almost all of them. I like 2 of them and my husband were left, I cut out going to concerts. I cut out going to parties, all of these things. I stopped hosting parties. And I really was like, oh my God, I'm losing myself. Who am I? What is this? And I thought I was, spiraling into a depression. But then I found human design that was explaining that, oh no, this is a process of letting go. It's letting go of that first life phase where you learned a lot. You bumped into a lot of shit. It was hard for a while. You weren't able to hermit that much, even if you felt like it. It was just being pulled into all of these different directions. And then now having that time to like lick my wounds and just sit up here and really take that in. And I'm really grateful for that mindfulness practice because that's made this roof process easier, especially knowing that I'm here, but just being able to observe that, oh, wait, okay, I've learned that lesson. And I mean, it can be it's so funny because I really like to pull things down to the really, really mundane level. And it's even down to like how I pour my cereal. And it's like, because I used to like just pour the milk into the cereal and it would splash everywhere. And now I find myself pouring it on the side. It's just like down to smallest lessons like that, to the lesson of, oh, wait, hey, I have to actually take some responsibility for this power. I have to actually take some responsibility for this emotional power that I can express, because I was a complete bitch my first life phase. Like, if anybody who was friends with me until I was 30, I'm sorry. It's like I was supportive and encouraging and empowering the people that I felt were within my principles of being able to do that. But I could be a complete bitch. And it was because I didn't understand the impact I had. I really, truly did not see it. I mean, Manifestor second line, I don't see it at all. And it wasn't really until I think it was a year into my design journey, and I was talking to my mindfulness teacher, who I still have a relationship with. He's an amazing guy. He's just off of Chiron, and he just came off the roof. He's a 6'2", and it's just, I love him to death. And we were talking, and he was like, okay, are you open to hearing this now? 4323 deafness. Like, are you open to hearing this? And I'm like, okay, I'm open to hearing this. He's like, you leave disaster trails. You leave disaster trails. Do you understand this? And I'm like, I do what? Because I had no idea. And that's really, I really understood at that point that raw is like, yeah, manifestors need to understand their impact. That's all they should care about, is how do I impact this person? How am I impacting this room? How am I impacting this community, whatever? And I was just like, I started bawling and crying, and I was like, fuck, it was such a shattering. But then to really, what I'm noticing is the more I get into the roof, I'm 38 now, and I really enjoy it up here. I really don't like to get into the drama anymore. There's so much drama going on. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? What are you guys doing? Why? But at the same time, there is, I see this objectiveness just coming more and more and more there. And this understanding just building. But there's also this part of me that's like, I feel like, oh, I don't know if I can share this yet, because I know that in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to have a different perspective, right? Because I can already feel that the perspective is changing like every day. It's so weird, but leaning into that feels so good. My beautiful hermit body is finally getting the peace that it wants, and that I have this ability to just be. But it took really understanding that profile aspect, because I was devastated. I really felt like I was doing life wrong, because why was I cutting out everything? And so that was a grieving process that needed to happen. Like, okay, I'm no longer that person. Of course, I love music. Of course, I'm going to go to a concert here and there, but it's not my lifestyle anymore. So yeah, it's a really interesting process, and I can't wait to see what it's like in a month or a year.
Yeah, I really resonate with some of the stuff you're saying there. So I have a 6-line channel, and I have the most number of 6 lines in my chart as well. And I just went through my Saturn return, and it literally feels like I cannot recognize the person I was before. Even though I was, for the past 5 or 6 years or 7 years, I've been moving in this direction really slowly. And, in some sense, I can recognize that, but I cannot relate with the life that I had. I cannot relate with the people that were in my life. And similarly, like you said, like it's even my own thoughts right now. I have this feeling of, especially with my channel being in the understanding circuit as well, it's like, yeah, understanding is never stagnant. Like I may say something today and then 2 days later, it's like, huh? Actually, that's not correct. Like there's something else that I've recognized here that I know can add more objectivity to what I'm saying. So I really recognize that process, and I'm just starting to be in it, right? So I wonder how I'm going to feel as I evolve in this process. But I mean, a 6-2 profile is actually a really good profile, because in the sense that, I mean, all profiles are good, but what I'm trying to say is that, the hermit body, when you do get on the roof as a 6 line, the hermit body naturally just knows how to like pull back and do its own thing. And when you're doing your own thing, there is this natural play that happens. Nothing that you do feels like work. It just feels like you're playing, you're having fun, and you're just doing your own thing. And as a manifestor that is designed to be relatively independent, for the most part, like having that second line and being on the roof, I feel like all of these things are supportive to you just being in your process, and being social when it's the right time. So
Yes.
that's pretty cool. Something else that you also brought up was something that I have realized in a big way myself. It's like manifestors really don't realize their impact on other people. They just don't. I mean, I told you, like, I grew up with manifestor friends, and sometimes a glance my way, and a few of them were emotional, would fill me up with all sorts of feelings, and like it would make me feel a certain way. And it's so funny because it's been maybe 10 years, 15 years. I still remember that look. I still remember some of the things that they've said to me, and not just you know the negative stuff, but also the positive stuff. I have never been impacted by anyone else the way that I've been impacted by manifestors in my life, right? I mean, there's this random story of like me. I went to law school in the UK, and I remember this very like first day of my second year. I walked up to this tree, and there were a bunch of people standing there, and there was this boy who was just standing there. And I looked at him and could tell that his aura is super powerful from a distance, right? And we didn't speak the whole time, but anything that he said, it just stuck with me. And later I found out we like had lots of electromagnetics, and we ended up becoming friends. And we're not in touch anymore because he's super independent. He goes and does his vanishes for years, then comes back. And that's something that I've accepted about manifestors. But I still today will think about some of the things that were said in conversation back then, or how I felt around them, or what they introduced me to, or and how that initiation kind of helped me move forward in my life. So I mean, manifestor impact is huge, and manifestors in their close aura are just like me, impact.
Yeah, I remember very clearly. This was before human design, but I had an employee, and she was 2021, and I was in my 30s. And so she was really curious, but she was very timid and careful about the way she asked her question. But she's like, well, why don't you have kids? And I was like, oh, well, that was a conscious decision I made when I was 16. I don't want that role. I have no intention of having the role of motherhood. I can definitely be a good mother in different ways. And she was just like, that's an option. I that's a possibility for me, that I don't have to have children. And I'm like, excuse me, you didn't know that? Just like, and I will still get messages from this person, once a year, thanking me for letting them know that they had a choice. And I'm like, I completely changed her life trajectory with that one sentence. And that is some powerful shit that can be scary when you really see it. And it also gives me that sense of responsibility as a 1222. Don't fucking do things when you're not in the mood. don't. It's not going to be good for anybody. Like if I didn't take the nap that I had to have before you and I met, this would not be a good conversation. There is some responsibility in that. And I can only speak to emotional manifestors, but I believe that all manifestors have to really go through a refinement of understanding. I am very powerful in my communication. And I'm also on the cross of informing. So it's like, a little bit of information can go a far way. And so and I have that with my clients too, where people will be like, 2 or 3 months later, like, oh, it finally landed, and that takes a lot of me understanding that I'm just here to say what really feels right because, I'll be social, but I want to impact you. That's why I'm social. There is an agenda behind it. It's like, I'll be social, but I really want to move you somewhere. Let's get the stagnant energy out of the fucking way and go, And so that's what I want to do. And so I don't see that unless someone actually tells me and someone actually can reflect back to me that impacted me. And if not, then I'm just gonna, I know that I have an impact, but I don't know. So it's scary sometimes too, because I changed someone's life with a sentence, and I've done that before. I know. So
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I feel like I don't tell enough to my manifestor friends. Like, I just assume that they know. Like, I just assume that you just know how freaking powerful you are. It's just because it's so obvious to the rest of us that we just think that we don't have to let you know. But you're so right, because that can help manifestors realize more about the kind of impact that they do have. And, maybe that also brings a sense of peace to them, right? Because ultimately, whether you're a manifestor or not, having realized that you had impact just really resonates somewhere really deep within yourselves. So yeah, I think you make a really good point, and about being emotional and just really taking responsibility for your moods. Like, yeah, that's huge as an emotional manifestor for sure. I have definitely been burned by manifestor anger and just this chaos. And yeah, it doesn't feel good. It makes you feel really
yeah.
too. Yeah.
And speaking of impact, I also once had an employee. I don't remember what I shared something on Facebook about leadership, and I had a employee reach out regarding that post because it was something about this makes a good leader. And she was one of the first employees I'd ever had. I was very young. I was not a good leader at that point of time. I was an okay leader, but not a great one. And she said, hey, I saw your post and I just wanted to let you know, there was one time when you were my manager and, me and this other person were standing in the bar and you were in a mood and you kicked a bottle towards us and said, clean up, and just left. And I just felt I could remember exactly what she was talking about. When she mentioned it, I remembered it because I also remember going to the back room thinking, oh, that was unnecessary. Right. Because I was just in a mood and I just out on them. And she's like, that really impacted me. And that's something. And this is like 10 years ago. I was maybe 26, and she still remembers that. And so that's really where I'm like, oh, fuck this refinement. There's got to be a refinement, because that I can punch with a word, or like you said earlier, with a look, it's intense. And I think, I'm in the middle of this manifestor program now where I'm taking 4 manifestors through the process of really leaning into the basics of their design. And this is what all of them have in common. I mean, they have a lot of different things in common, but especially that powerful part of, they're all females too. And they're like, they don't know. They have no idea. And no one's told them either, right? Positive or negative, not that there's positive or negative. I don't like good or bad, but that impact that I created in that, employee, that was something that wasn't okay. It wasn't right. That wasn't on her that I was in a bad mood. And so there's really there's a responsibility. There's just a responsibility. And so when I see in Facebook groups where manifestors are like, oh, I yelled at this person in line today and ha 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 ha, anger, ha ha. I'm like, whoa, stop a moment. Wait, shit's gonna happen, of course. And we're not here to do that. That I'm a manifestor, I can do what the fuck I want. There's refinement. There needs to be a refinement process of really understanding your power. So rant over.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think with your individual channel as well, like there is a deep like potential for serious mutation there, right? There is like, and also mutation sometimes takes time as well. It's like, I'm sure people have come back to you like, yeah, it didn't quite click in the moment, but like 3 months later, I just knew exactly where you were trying to empower me or exactly what you were trying to say. And yeah, I mean, that's also a fascinating process for you to witness as an individual manifestor in that way, right? And again, with the individual mind as well, which is deeply mutative too. And then with your supportive frequency from synthesis, like, yeah, that's quite something for sure. Um, I'm wondering, what's your relationship with melancholy then? Because out of the three channels that you have, two of them are individual. And, I mean, channel of openness. So I have 22, I have 55. So I experience that frequency a lot. And it is one of the most beautiful, like it's so lovely to be by yourself in that melancholy if you have understood that you don't need to make meaning of it, right?
Yeah.
And it's the most poetic, the most passionate, the most like, I don't know, I love that frequency when it shows up in my system. But and of course, amazing art is created through that. I mean, amazing music. I mean, when I'm melancholic, music is heavenly to me. And I just know by the frequency of the sound that this is the sound that my spirit wants right now. So, yeah, what's your relationship with melancholy, with art, with creativity? And yeah, how do you express yourself?
Yeah. Oh, I love my melancholy. I always have, but society kept telling me it was wrong. Society kept telling me that, oh no, if you're feeling a little bit bad, then you should take this pill, and so, or do something, the personal development world was like, well, do something, take a massive action, change your step, posture, whatever. And it's just like, no, let's live in this. Let's feel this. Let's really honor it. And for me, the creative process really is writing. I love to write. I definitely have to have music. I mean, there's certain, musicians, certain albums, certain songs that are just like reserved for that time. And so it's like my husband knows if I have a glass of red wine and Tom McRae is on, it's time for him to leave and leave me alone and just let me do my thing, give me a kiss on the cheek and go. Because I just love to be in it and work through it, and just like, because I think a lot of the people who I've talked to who are emotional, it's like, well, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to be in this. I don't, it's, everybody else doesn't have to. And I'm like, well, either they're faking it or they're just unemotional, This is part of our beauty of really being able to go to those depths and swim in the darkness of despair and feel like life is going to fucking end tomorrow. And then you wake up and go, oh, it didn't end. It was okay, and like you said, music, like Adele with the 1222, it's like, hello, what would we do if she didn't use that melancholy to create music? And I really love writing when I'm melancholic. A lot of what I've written that's gone on my blog has been when I'm in melancholy. And then I'll wait till I'm a little bit out of that, and then I'll reread it and rewrite a little bit of it, because sometimes it can get a little bit dark and dreary. And then, I'll post it. But it's always, that's part of my art process, and I wouldn't be without it. And I've been on medicine before for depression. I've been in the system heavily of them giving me all kinds of diagnoses. Oh, you're bipolar, you have to try this. And oh no, you're major depressed, you have to try this. Oh no, wait, it's this. And then finally ADHD. And then I was just like, okay, I'm done. Stop giving me diagnoses. Let's not go there. I'm just going to be myself. But it was really hard because I got to the point when my doctors thought I was bipolar. This was way, way back, but they gave me a medicine where someone could have come and been like, your mom died yesterday, and I would have just been apathetic. I had no feeling. I had nothing. And I really remember like not feeling like myself is an understatement. It was just like this huge part of me was just ripped away. I couldn't go to those depths of despair. I would just go to and but I really found that my baseline is melancholic. It's like I'm not a person who is excited all the time, or let's do this, or let's go there, or woo, yay, yay. I'm just like chill, and then I'll have spikes of woo, that's amazing, and then I'll have jeeps to pair, and then I'll go up and down, and it can do that in 5 minutes or 5 days depending on. But really honoring that process, I think, is just so important for any emotional being, manifestor or not. It's just like, you are here and we are designed to go there because there's something in there. There's something creatively beautiful, amazingly juicy at the bottom. But there are, and of course I fall into this too, where it's like, I don't want to, I'll witness myself be like, I just don't want to. But when I can lean in and let go and just go there, it's like, oh, okay, this is juicy. And then there's times where it's not juicy and it just feels really fucking painful. And then it's just that mindful awareness of that this too is going to pass. Right now it feels like this and it's going to pass. So yeah, I love my melancholy. And I'm also married to a pure individual, single definition MG, who melancholy is, our breakfast. It's just part of our relationship. It's just part of who we are. And it's really been hard for him too, as a man, to accept his melancholy, as a man to accept that the pulse is not on. We're not going there now, It's just been really freeing for him as well to just be like, pulse isn't on. I'm not ready. I'm not having a response. I'm not, I'm just in the waiting mode of the generator, doing things that, create satisfaction for him. He'll go climbing. We're living in a house now where they have a PlayStation. So he's found his love for Need for Speed or whatever that game was called, and it's just like, he feels so good now though, because he really, and I say now because frustrated sacral is so intensely disturbing, like jarring. People are like, the emotional people can be jarring. Yeah, so can the frustrated sacral. It can. But really allowing him also to just lean into the melancholy. And he's a musician, he plays all kinds of instruments. And so he'll make music. He'll literally go and make a song because that's what he wants to do, or he'll play a game, or he'll do, but it's just like this, I'm going to find my satisfaction through this melancholy. I'm going to find my peace through the melancholy. Yeah.
We really need to stop medicating people for having feelings. We really need to stop making people feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not always switched on. I mean, that's so the culture that we live in, the society that we live in. And I mean, it's so disturbing to watch people be diagnosed with all sorts of things and for them to get in their head about that. And like you said, to never really fully reach the depth that they're very much designed to reach and to find what's there at that depth, right? And I mean, I have a lot of individual circuitry in my chart as well, and my personality, Sun and Earth, are both individual gates. And so, I mean, I just, even when I'm super melancholic, like, I know that, like, it literally for me, it feels like life is being squeezed out of my cells right now. It literally feels like such a deep contraction in my being. But there's something so beautiful about it because it's real. And those moments, like when even like, of course I do have my eyes as well, when I just feel like so full of spirit, my 55.6 is just, I can just sense it, right? I just feel so full of spirit. But when it's, and I enjoy that, but when I'm just really like contracting and it feels like life is ending and that there's nothing that's going to appear beyond this, because no matter how many times you go through that melancholy, it still always feels like this is it, this is the end. Now the sun is never going to rise and I'm never going to feel spirit again. Like, I'm never going to feel the spirit of life again, but you do. And even when you're in that low, I just love it because it's honest. I don't think I've experienced a more honest frequency, because again, it's not something that needs to be validated by anyone else. Like, that's the thing about having individual circuitry, right? It's you with you.
Wow.
And you don't need anyone to validate that, because you're so in it by yourself there. And as you go through the process of self-empowerment that happens there, and creativity and beautiful things coming out of melancholy, like, I wouldn't take it away for the world. I think it's the most beautiful experience to have. And yes, I was too told that there's something wrong with me, that I experience this from time to time. And I thought there was something seriously wrong with me, because, the thing about the pulse off is sometimes it's there for a few days, but sometimes I've spent years, like maybe close to a year, actually, a little over that, just being off, like nothing, like no point to life, no point to anything. And I think those places can get very depressing and difficult, because you think that you're never going to recover from that, but you do.
But then you do, yeah. But that's so true. And it's, my husband's been in the same thing. It's just, there has been no, when COVID came, he's an international wedding photographer. And so, this purely individual force of nature, MG, with 214 and 18, like, knows where he's going. It's just like in struggle and perfected form. It's like, he's here to create art. He's here to contribute this. He's here to really do this. And then COVID came and was like, oh no, your entire business is illegal, because weddings weren't happening and you couldn't gather more than 10 people. And so it was a really hard process for him. And it was about 2 years where it was just, of course he, there was times where he could do his work, and there were other things he would do, and he would find creativity in projects and stuff, but the pulse was just completely off. It just was like, okay, this is time to recoup, time to do something else, time to pivot a little bit. And it was really hard for him to see that and feel that. And I'd say the pulse has been off for him for about 2 years, and it's like, just been like, nope, there's not that push is not coming. We're just stagnant in what's happening. And this is what's, it's the day to day stagnation. There's nothing moving. And that can get really fucking hard for the mind. Like, the meanings we can create from the situation are, well, the fantasy is endless. So it can be all kinds of insane things that we can create meanings around. And so it's been really interesting seeing him now in the past, I'd say maybe 4 to 6 months, really coming back, seeing that pulse coming back on. We also create maturation and mutation together. So there's a lot of things that are happening here. But it's like, when you can honor it and just see it for what it is, and understand that, it's back to that cliche meme, but it's so true, is that we're not on the same timeline. you know, things are going to be different for everybody. It's not, you know, I was talking to a manifestor. I think she's 28, maybe 29, just around Saturn return ending ish time. And oh my gosh, you know, I thought my life would be completely different. I'm 28 and I haven't gotten this done or this done and this done. I'm like, sweetheart, I'm 38. I don't know where I'm going either. You know, let's just, that's not what we're not measuring it towards an age or a milestone but that kind of thought process can really get in the way of honoring that the pulse is off. It's just not there. And so I really hope that people that are listening take that away of like, you're not on anybody's timeline but your own, and your body knows. You know, we just got to trust it.
For sure. And you know what I see with these like longer like phases of not knowing and being super melancholic, at least that's what I've experienced and that's what I've observed outside of myself. When we go through these longer shifts, like something really changes on the other side, you know? And it's something that's completely unpredictable. It's something that you're not expecting at all. And it at least that's what I've experienced. It just completely like that 1-ish year of me being just completely depressed, and coming out of that, my entire trajectory completely switched and changed. And what I knew inside myself after that, I'd never known before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never known it with that intensity. You know, I guess you really learn to value knowing when you go through long processes of not knowing, right? And then you also learn to value the not knowing, because it's just, I mean, you see how it all works together, right? I mean, how can you expect to like, an individual just becomes new over and over and over in their lifetime, right? Because as they shift, as time shifts, as they move forward in their life, like a new version of them is needed. Like, you know, they need to empower themselves to be that new version, and they keep changing and keep shifting. So, I mean, if you can zoom out just a little bit and just witness that process, then I think you can settle into it a little bit more. Having said all of this, it's still difficult. And, you know, seeking creativity, trying to channel those feelings, those emotions, or that contraction in a certain way is definitely helpful. And, you know, you've mentioned your husband a couple of times. So I'm really curious about, manifestor in relationship with a manifesting generator.
Who is very deaf, very, very deaf. He's got struggle. He's got 39 and 43. And I am compromised in every single one of his channels. And I am dominant in my 2, and he's compromised in my 43, 23. So it's a really interesting relationship. Okay, so the real quick story of how we met. I initiated a birthday party at my ex's house. Because I was like, I don't have a house, but my ex-boyfriend has a house. Hi, can I have my birthday party at your house? My gosh. And so I did. And so I had like a friend bring a friend party. And so at the end of the day, there were more people there who I didn't know than I did know. And one of my best friends brought one of his friends that I didn't know. And that friend ended up writing on my entire fridge. I say my fridge because I had used to live in that apartment, but the fridge, when I woke up the next day, he had written www.myspace.com/the on my fridge. And I'm like, oh, that's a Shakespeare, play, like the Rape of Lucrece. Like, what is this? This must be interesting because I love Shakespeare. Hello, drama. Hello, passion. And so I go into MySpace. For those who don't know, MySpace was what was it before Facebook, and I check it up, and it's this death metal band. I'm like, okay, I'm not really into death metal, but I'll listen. Well, And what used to be status updates on Facebook were called bulletins on MySpace. My husband, I didn't know this at the time, was the person behind the account. He was the drummer of this band, or of the Rape of Lucrece. And so he was the person behind the account. And he wrote a bulletin, Atreyu vocalist shot dead. And I was like devastated because Atreyu was one of the bands I love. And so I'm going in and I'm going to read this. And he's like, haha, just joking. Design 39. Right. And I don't have 55, but damn, what I was like, okay, let's go. I'm like, haha, that was not funny. What the fuck? Don't scare me like that. We started talking and I noticed they were going to have, or actually on the fridge, he had also written the 22nd of April, Checkpoint Charlie. So I knew that they were going to have a concert. And so I was like, I'm coming to your concert in the 26th of April. And we just started chatting back and forth on this MySpace app before we actually understood we live 30 minutes away from each other. And we're both Norwegian because we had been speaking in English. So it was just like this weird coincidence. And so I got really shit-faced drunk and went to his concert. And after the concert, I was just straight up to him, you're mine kind of thing, just, and after that, our relationship just really evolved, and it took me a long time. I'm picky, and we were together for 4 years. And then I said, I want to get married, but I don't want to agree to get married. I need the passion. I need the romance. So please, get down on some knees and ask me to marry me, and he took forever. And there was so many perfect moments, like we were at Disney and there's, all this firework going on. I'm like, oh, he's going to do it now. Oh, he's going to do it now. But no, we didn't do it now. And I'm just like, God, when is he going to do it? But it was amazing because I do love his provocation. I do. I'm like, okay, you got me. And so it ended up with him he's completely open solar plexus. But when he does romance, he really knows how to do it. And the way he proposed was he restaged our first date. And when we had our first date, we had zero money. We were super broke. We were 22, I believe. I'm not sure. 2006. And we had tomato soup with egg and macaroni. That was like what I could afford to eat back then. And I didn't have furniture where I lived, so we would sit on the floor and eat it. And so he had I had this long weekend, and I come home and I don't notice anything because I was just like, I need to get out of these work clothes. I need to put on something comfy. And then I come into the living room and there's just like candle lights everywhere. And I was just like, oh, you just thought I had a long weekend and this was so nice. And then he had put the ring in the tomato soup. This is something that's so cliche. It's so cliche. And something that it took me a long time for him to, it took me a long time to admit to him. I saw the ring way before I said anything. I saw the ring and emotional authority, right? It's the more I look back at these big things, like I had told him I was ready, but I needed to eat that soup. And I ate up the soup, and then I was pretending I was surprised. But I was just like, yeah. And then he looks at me, he didn't ask me to marry him. He's like, do you want to spend the rest of my life or do you want to spend the rest of your life with me? And I was like, oh, yes. And so Alex and I relationship has always been based on like, one of the first things he told me was like, I don't read between the lines. I don't play games. That's not what I do. And I really love that honesty. At the same time as my dramatic self was like, what, you don't play games? But learning that a really open, honest relationship where communication is number one is much more fun than the dramatic games. So he's taught me a lot about me. I mean, he really has empowered me to be myself. He's really allowed me to just be myself. And he's always like, why are you apologizing? Why are you, saying you're sorry? Like that open ego shit. He also has an undefined ego, but he's a man. So he's got a little different aspect of looking at that thing, and he's always encouraging me, and vice versa with him. Like I've really initiated him into becoming an international wedding photographer. I was the one that was like, you're going to go to this workshop. I don't care that we don't actually have the money to do it because I can feel that there's something more inside of you. I can feel that this is where you're going to go. Let's go. So people have always looked at our relationship and been like, oh, it's so beautiful and it's so perfect. And I'm like, there's a lot of work behind it. there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of time alone. We're 9-0 together. We don't need anybody else, but we know we need time apart. We know we need to be, before COVID, he had 133 days a year he would travel, and that was perfect. That totally worked for us. And people would be like, you're going to go on vacation without your husband? I'm like, hell yes, I'm going to go on vacation without my husband. Of course. So we've always had a mutual agreement of allowing each other to be, but meeting as two individuals who wants the best for each other. And so, yeah, I love our relationship. I really do. Yeah. And so compromise gets a hard rep because I think he just has a lot to teach me in those areas when I can be humble enough to his wisdom. Yeah.
And when you truly resonate to someone else and it's really correct, you are open for that wisdom, because, we think that we're just randomly meeting people. That's not true. Everyone here is here to teach you something or show you something or share some kind of awareness with you. And especially these like long standing like actors and players in our movie, right? They're really there for a reason. And if it's really correct, then both parties really benefit from each other's frequency. And the mind might not always feel that way, because the mind has its own notions about what is good and bad. But for your awareness, that's exactly what you needed, right? And so that's really beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that, because it just like warms my heart. And yeah, it sounds lovely. It just sounds really beautiful. And for someone like, I'm a projector. I'm always looking for the right other. I'm always looking for, the right person for me. Well, not actively looking, but you know what I mean, right? And so it's just really nice to hear these stories of, like where you just see a chart and you're like, oh my God, so many compromises, where 9-0, we can get stuck together. But sometimes, being 9-0 can also be really overwhelming, because you can just like feel really trapped in that, right? And so sometimes you can look at a composite chart and you can be like, oh my God, this is way too intense, but actually it works. And sometimes you can look at a composite chart and be like, yeah, this actually looks great, but it doesn't work, right? And it all just comes down to if it's the right person for you through your strategy and authority. And if you resonate with each other, then it's amazing.
Yeah, I think both Eirik and I, my husband's name is Eirik, I just call him husband, but both of us have this notion of we don't need each other. We want to be in a relationship with each other. We've chosen to do that. And of course, there might come a day where one of us doesn't want to do that anymore. But so far, no. We love each other and respect each other. And God forbid that day comes, because my mind would go crazy if that day did come. But it's just that mutual respect. And like you said, this relationship has brought me so much awareness and so much good conditioning, right? Like the type of conditioning that I like and want, because I can feel that it's right, but it is really interesting because in the beginning of our relationship, we didn't have that much distance, but I would work nights and he would work days. And so we've always had this relationship where it's like, we're not, even though we're a 9-0, it's like, yeah, we'll get stuck together for a week. And then I'll be like, I'm going to go to my friend's house. She's an 8-1, or we're an 8-1 together. So I'll just like hang out there for 3 days and then I'll come back. Or, he'll go to the States because he has a whole bunch of people in the States and a whole huge network there. It's just like being able to be honest about, now I'm feeling suffocated. Right now, I feel like, for me, I'm being pulled into your direction, or I feel like your frustrated sacral is just too much right now. It's really interesting to have this honesty. And for him too, he's not like, he doesn't study human design on his own, but he picks up what I put down all the time. And so we'll often have conversations about it. And he's really interested in listening to me about this subject, and especially when it's about him and his personal development and what I see, because he's like, oh, generator, can I let me talk to me about me and personal view, talk to me about me, you know. And so it's like he really will get into it, but he's also a 1-3 and he's really curious. You know, he really wants to understand the foundation of this, and so he'll ask the most insane questions, like, you know, he's really curious about, well, because there's certain parts of the world where they will curate a birth time. They'll like have a what is it called? Not a natural birth, but like they'll cut open the C-section. Yes.
Yeah.
And they'll like order a C-section for that time and that day. But what does that say about human design? How does that work? And I'm just like, dude, I don't know. I have no idea. I'll put your question out there. If anybody has the answer, please let me know. But it's like, he's just an open head or undefined head for him. But it's just like, he really has these most insane questions, and he's a cross of tension. So he's here to really fine tune, you know, everything that comes into his sphere. And it's just beautiful to watch, but sometimes can be a little bit annoying because I don't have the answer.
Well, from what I know, it doesn't matter if it's a C-section or a vaginal birth. The moment of birth, like when the baby's out, is what is what is used to calculate.
Yes.
The
Okay,
child.
good.
Why? But that's
what it is. That's perfect. I'll let him know. He's going to want to know why, but I'll let him know that we don't know why.
Perfect. Well, this was like really, really amazing, Jessica. I had so much fun, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed like the honesty that you brought forward, and yeah, I can just feel your power. I can just feel your cross coming through in such a big way. And yeah, I can't wait to see what happens with the conference. I can't wait to see what else goes on, always waiting for your impact. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you too. I'm just feel really honored to be here. I love this conversation. It was fun.